Hey guys, I'm back, and today I thought I could do a video on money lessons I learned in my 20s, including sharing a couple of things that I wish I had done in my 20s. I guess after my last video on investment bags, a couple of you were impressed by my financial prowess and asked me about budgeting and prioritizing spending, especially when it comes to things like luxury items. I thought that was a really good idea because I am a strong advocate for financial responsibility, literacy, and independence. I very much believe that regardless of who you are, you should never be dependent on someone else for your finances, because you never know what can happen. And I know sometimes that message gets lost in the shuffle of our consumeristic culture. But I'm hoping, in my sharing these lessons with you today, you might learn something and take it to heart. Before I get into my lessons, I guess it's probably useful to share a little bit about my background and context. Back when I was a 21-year-old, first out of college, I was very fortunate in that I got a pretty good paying job in finance, earning around $55,000 a year plus a pretty substantial bonus. Now, I know that's not necessarily the norm, but if you are a college graduate these days, you can probably expect anywhere from between $30,000 to even $100,000 if you are in a high demand field like computer science. For me back then in finance, that kind of salary was pretty much the norm, and I was very glad for it because that was a lot of money for me as a young grad. I mean, growing up, we were not wealthy, so I never had the experience of having so much money for myself to spend on whatever I wanted. Despite having this kind of windfall for the first time ever, I remained true to my kind of upbringing and was very financially responsible and never did anything foolish. So the first lesson that I have is to don't splurge on rent. Living in New York, you can spend pretty much infinite sums on rent, but it's just dumb. I know we all like to live in comfort and style, but really at such a young age, there's no need to be focused on having such a luxurious space. If you are lucky enough to have at such a young age a house and you're therefore paying a mortgage, then I think it's totally fine to pay a little bit more. But if you are just renting, I think, especially at that young age, it's just a waste of money. There's no need for it, and you should be focused on kind of, again, building towards that financial independence so that you have more freedoms a little later. The second lesson is to not waste money on transportation. Now, of course, living in New York, there is the MTA, and I had a monthly unlimited pass. This meant I rarely took a cab because anytime I got in a cab, it was at minimum $10. And if I already paid for this unlimited MTA card, you better believe I was using that. Now, maybe on the rare occasion when I was piss-ass drunk, I would have splurged on a cab, but for the most part, the trains were pretty reliable and convenient. So yeah, I guess sometimes at 3 a.m. you might have to wait 30 minutes. And this is actually another reason why having a roommate was great, because we would actually go out together a lot of the time, so I had a buddy. I mean, obviously, if you are out alone and taking the train or walking at that hour, there are some precautions you should take and just to be safe. But at least for me, whenever I was out with a friend, I would be taking the train. Now, if you don't have public transportation in your city, obviously this does not apply. However, what does apply is to not waste money on a new car. I totally understand it's your first job, you have this windfall and you want to spend it, but it's just one of the worst decisions you can make financially to buy a new car or to lease a car, unless you got some amazing lease rate for whatever reason. For the most part, buying a used car is definitely the smarter thing to do. I mean, if I didn't live in New York and had to get a car, I would have probably been driving a 10-year-old Corolla or something like that. Just reliable Toyotas, you can always count on them, and honestly, 21 years old, who gives a damn about my image in a car, The third lesson is to maximize your 401k benefit. And this is of course most applicable to US citizens and residents, because in the US, for the most part, all retirement is done privately. Very few companies these days offer things like a pension, and that's just, changing times. And who knows what's going to happen to Social Security by the time we retire, so you should definitely have a plan for yourself and for your retirement. And to that end, a lot of companies do offer kind of 401k benefits, like they will match a certain percentage of what you contribute to your 401k. So whatever your company's benefit policy is, you should definitely maximize that, because if you don't, it is really just giving up on free money. And saving for retirement, even at such a young age, is definitely critical because of the powers of compounding, which a lot of you saw in my last video. Alright, so those are kind of the lessons from my 20s, and now for a few things that I wish I had done. One, I should have invested more. So even though I was saving quite a bit of money every month and had those annual bonuses, I just kept most of that in a standard high interest savings account. What I wish I had done more of, despite working in finance, I was not very good about managing my own portfolio. I wish I had actually put that money into an investment of some sort, so probably an index fund or ETF. Something like that that goes with the market, that is relatively safe. Obviously, the market is never risk-free, but in the long run, if you go with just an index like the Dow or the S&P, that has always historically shown that over the long run, it goes up and up and up. These days, it is also super easy to invest. So there are tons of kind of startups, financial startups, so to speak, not really startups anymore, but they offer very easy to understand and set up kind of robo-trading platforms. So Wealthfront and Betterment are two great examples of this. There is a very nominal fee that they take for their services, and I'm totally willing to pay it because I just can rely on their robo-trading algorithms to deliver me optimal results. Now, I would say because of the risks, if you know you need, say, X amount of money in a year, maybe for a down payment or something, then it's probably safer to go a risk-free route and just put it into savings or a CD. And that's because you just never know what's going to happen in the market, and if you know you need the money in a certain amount of time, and that's a pretty short amount of time, then it's definitely a little bit risky to put it into the market. But if you have kind of longer term goals in mind, absolutely, I wish I had invested more. The second thing I wish I would have done is listen to the advice that cheap is expensive. So I believe this is a Spanish saying, lo barato sale caro, and forgive me for my horrible Spanish. I was never a Spanish speaker, did French. But basically it's the idea that you get what you pay for, and cheap is probably expensive because instead of buying one thing, you end up buying 10 of them. It's not always true, but definitely in clothing, I have found that it is absolutely true. So back in my early 20s, I did shop at Forever 21 a lot. And today, I honestly don't believe I have a single piece of clothing that I bought from Forever 21 back then. Even though each piece cost $15, $10, honestly, the overall amount of money that I spent there and what I have to show for it is pretty much zilch. In contrast, I have this jacket from Miu Miu that I bought 10 years ago, and I to this day will wear this jacket 3 seasons of the year. It is amazing, and at that time this was a lot of money for me. This was, I believe it was like $100 or $150 on sale from Filene's Basement, and I debated and mulled over whether or not it was worth it. Yet here we are today, 10 years later. This jacket has withstood the test of time, and every time I wear it to this day I still get compliments, so clearly I did something right there. How I am now kind of internalizing this lesson is I am really thoughtful about anything that I buy, particularly clothing. I really think about whether or not I think an item of clothing is going to withstand the test of time. Is it something that is just a passing fancy, or is it something that I actually really want and can get a lot of wear out of? And I'm willing to pay a little bit more per item in order to have something that's high quality that I will use and want to use, versus buying 20 pieces from Forever 21. All right, now that I've talked about my lessons and should've, would've, could've's, I think it might be useful to share with you what my first fresh out of school budget looked like with my first job. So as you recall, I made $55,000 in salary plus an annual bonus, and that basically meant about $3,000 a month in take-home pay. And so that's take-home pay after taxes and after contributing to my 401k. And here we go. This was kind of my budget. As I mentioned, don't waste money on rent and transportation. In my case, my rent and utilities and transportation came to about $1,200 a month. I mean, realistically, it was probably a little bit more than that, but this is just, you know, big easy chunks for our little demo pie chart here. Now, in a city like New York today, like I mentioned, this kind of rent is probably hard to achieve without taking some bigger sacrifices, but you just have to figure out what's worth it to you. So I encourage people to kind of spend about a third of their take-home pay on rent, or maybe 40% of their take-home pay on a combo of rent and transportation and utilities. My next big bucket of food and entertainment. So for me, this is where I probably wasted the most money, so to speak, because cooking was just not a priority. I ate out for lunch every day. Then I probably spent around $40 a week on groceries, primarily from places like Trader Joe's, where I would just mostly buy frozen foods because that shit is awesome. And then finally, a big chunk went to eating out. Honestly, if I cooked more, this whole blue section of work, lunch, groceries, and eating out could have been much, much smaller. So for gym, I actually didn't go to a regular gym, but I did go to classes every once in a while. I would do like yoga classes, Bikram yoga, or a spin class or something like that. So that's what that $80 is. Obviously, you can always just work out at home. There's so many ways to do that now, and you can always go running, which I personally absolutely hate. So it was a slice that I was willing to spend the money on. That left me with about $120 for shopping, which I know seems like really little, but really I didn't shop every month. So oftentimes it'd be like a few months before I actually decided to go out and buy stuff. Also, when it comes to shopping, there was Christmas, and usually at Christmas my parents would give me like some cash, or my mom would take me shopping. So that was usually my Christmas gift. So basically my shopping slice is pretty small. Finally, a big chunk of my take-home pay, 33% was always my goal, went to savings. And this is savings in addition to kind of the retirement savings via the 401k. This is just savings that I have for kind of a rainy day fund slash saving towards that financial independence I mentioned earlier. Also, that savings chunk, especially if you have a college loan, that is what you can really expect to be paying off that college loan. I was pretty fortunate. I didn't have a ton of loan debt coming out of undergrad, but that is also something that you should be, considering. For me, actually, what a lot of the savings ended up going to was, after working a couple of years when I was 23, I decided to actually take a year off and travel the world. It was something that I had always wanted to do, so a big portion of my savings went towards that kind of leisurely year off. Obviously, I could have spent it on other things like luxury goods, but to be honest, I just prioritized travel and experiences more in my life at that point. Okay, now that I've shared with you kind of my sample budget, I do want to talk about luxury spending. And first of all, I have to say, my kind of luxury collection did not even start until I was much older. So I believe my first luxury bag I got when I was like 26, which is just due to the fact of how I prioritized spending. I mean, material objects are always going to be there, so to me, having those experiences in the way that I wanted those experiences at that time in my life was more important to me than building up a huge Chanel collection. Also, as you know, quite a few of my pieces are pre-loved, and I think that is just a smart thing to do. There should be absolutely no shame in buying anything pre-loved, because if it's in great condition and you can save $1,000, why wouldn't you do that? I personally just don't get it when people get all up in a tizzy about pre-loved items. Finally, as I said before about just being thoughtful of purchases, I still strongly believe in that. Unless I somehow had like a huge amount of money coming from a secondary side hustle income, for instance, I just would not be foolish about buying any witch bag, even though these days I can definitely afford it. It's not about whether I can afford it, it's about should I buy it, and what is really the purpose of that kind of material object when there are other things that I may want more in life, like possibly early retirement. That wraps up my video. I hope you found it useful, and if you are really young and just starting out in your career and are watching these YouTube videos on, luxury bags, maybe save up for that one piece that you really want, but understand that you are still young and have your whole life ahead of you to kind of build up a luxury handbag collection if that's something you really want. For now, I would say focus on spending wisely, building up that nest egg, and you will definitely get there, just be patient. Alright, that's my video. I hope this was useful to some of you, and if you have any questions, definitely leave them down below. I will try to answer them. And again, I hope you'll rate, comment, subscribe. I really do enjoy making these videos, and I will see you next time. Alright, bye guys.